the white canvas. Oh yeah, sometimes just looking at that big white slate and thinking, where do I go from here? What am I going to do? How do I start this? That seems to be one of the most intimidating things for all of us at one point or another. It's just all that white space. And where do we start? How do we get going with it? There's so much there. All the detail, whether we're out on location or we're painting from photos or from our memory, there's just this empty slate. And it can get scary. So I'm going to show you today some of the things that I do. There's only really a few ways that I normally will start a painting, but it depends on the painting. But I'll show you some of the things that help me, especially when I feel a little bit intimidated by what's in front of me, to just go for it, to just get started. Because nobody's perfect. None of our paintings are ever going to be perfect. There isn't a perfect artist on this earth today. And we don't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect. Nothing we do has to be exactly right. The wonderful thing about oil paint is it is entirely forgiving. we can do anything we want, just about, within reason, as far as our materials go. But when we start painting, we can just do whatever on there, and it will forgive us for it. We can go over it again, retrace our steps, we can wipe something off. We've got these mighty paper towels over here that will help us with that. We've got walnut oil, we can put a little dab on there and wipe something off. There's so many things we can do to not have to worry about making a mistake or not starting it right. It doesn't matter. Just get started. That's really what matters, is just getting started, having fun with it, just getting excited and feeling the joy of this opportunity that we have as artists to do something so cool, something so much fun, and so challenging and invigorating all the way around. So I'll show you at the end here of this what I normally do, but I'm also going to show you a couple of things that I have done over the years, not very often, especially in my art school days, things that I would do. But I really like to just jump right in with oil paint now, so that's pretty much what I do. But let me give you some ideas of things that you might want to try, some different tools that are out there, and also some things to stay away from, because there are some things when it comes to what we put on our panels, our canvas, whatever, whether it's a linen with lead primer on it, or it's a canvas with acrylic gesso, or a piece of ABS plastic, whatever it is that we're painting on. And in this case, this is a sheet of Arches watercolor paper that I gessoed with acrylic primer. And I didn't really need to gesso it with the primer. I did that just in case I wanted it to last for a while and stay around. If I didn't, the oil paints are acidic. They're going to eventually eat the paper away. But it's going to take a long time. It's going to take years and years for that to really happen, if at all, in our lifetime at least. We might start to see something happen with it. But to a great extent, I did it so that it would be a less absorbent ground, because the paper is really absorbent. But I also did this because I wanted to show you that we don't have to start with this wooden panel or stretch canvas or anything else that we would normally paint on to send to a gallery. A lot of what we want to learn, especially in the early years, is repetition, doing it over and over and over again, and doing a lot of it. Going out on location, using whatever materials we can. Look at James Gurney. He uses all kinds of different things. We can use markers and pencils and gouache and casein and oils, whatever seems to be convenient, watercolors. So the main thing is to do it a lot. And so something like this with this watercolor paper, I took it and put this big sheet up here. I taped it onto one of my panels so that it's rigid. And then I'll just mark 4 little boxes here and show you some of the different ideas things that you might be able to do as you're out on location, or even if you're painting from a photograph. Doesn't really matter if you're here in the studio, going from imagination, from memory, from a photograph, whether you're doing a still life from life, or out on location painting a landscape. A lot of these things, we can just do them anywhere. The main thing is to play, experiment, and get started with it. All right, so let's dive into some of this. Okay, so there are some things that are tried and true in the art world when it comes to things that we can put underneath our oil paintings that will work. And then there are some other things we want to avoid because they will be so frustrating for us. And I know because it's happened to me. Okay, so some of the things that are tried and true. You look here and you see a big menagerie of different things here. This right here is a sharpener for charcoal. Not necessarily the vine charcoal, because vine charcoal is really soft. It's a lot better if we just use a little razor and kind of get the edge we want. But for the most part, vine charcoal, we don't really need to do anything to it. It breaks easily, it has a lot of sharp little edges, and we can use those. In fact, I'm going to use that to create some boxes here. Come over, another one. Just like that, there. Now we've got 4 boxes we can work with to draw in, or to start a painting with. These are 4 different paintings that we're going to do here. And we'll get rid of that there so you don't get confused. Now, the thing about vine charcoal is it's not going to rise above the oil paint. There are some other things that will. This is one of them. So, all these fun colors, like, and even over here, I didn't put it in here because it would just mess up the whole feng shui dynamics of what I've got going on here, right? Anyway, these are some of the best. These are pastels, and it's just pigment. So it's the same, it has chalk in it rather than oil as the binder, but it's still pigment. So we can use pastels, we can use, not these, but charcoal, vine charcoal, pastel, charcoal, a lot of that, it's very similar to one another. So I've got all kinds of different pastels. There's Conti crayon and charcoal, and these are pastel pencils. And I like to sharpen these with a razor, not with one of these kinds of things here. These are fine for something maybe like a Prismacolor, where it's a colored pencil, but not necessarily for the pastel. These are so soft, we want to have a light touch using a razor. This works great for the the charcoal pencils that are like this, that don't have any wood on them. They're just the charcoal. I thought I had some in here. I don't at the moment. I have used all my just charcoal up. But that's where this works really well for getting a really pointy tip on a charcoal pencil, the hard charcoal, compressed charcoal. The vine charcoal isn't nearly so compressed. It's just basically stuff that's been burned, and this is what's left over afterwards. And it's really, really soft, as you can see. Something we can do, if we're intimidated at first by the oil paint, grab some charcoal pencils. All right, so here's just like a gray, a blue, and a pink, a fuchsia, something like that. What does it say on here? It doesn't. It just gives me the number, 4406. So there you go. So we're starting here with roses. When I look at this picture of roses, I see so much stuff going on in there. And I chose this deliberately for that. So we've got the roses here, the ones that are right up here close to us. They're big and front and center. And then we've got this little soft bluish, grayed down, light colored ground plant in there behind at the base of those flowers. Then we have more roses back behind those, red roses, some pink roses. And then we have this trellis all around that's so beautiful and intricate, has all that detail work going on in it. Then we have the building back behind it, that's the Miniaturista. The windows there going into one of their rooms, and they're fun windows, some things with the brick back there that has a nice coloration to it. We've got the sidewalk in there that's not just concrete sidewalk. which is always nice. It has that beautiful salmon tanned color to it. So a lot of things that are in there that we could use in this painting. But what is it about this photograph, or this, if I'm out on location and I'm doing this from life, what is it about this that really appeals to me? That's what it's all about. What in this stands out and I just think, wow, that is so cool. I like that. I want to paint that. I want someone else to experience what I just did when I looked at that. That's what I should be thinking about. But how do I express that? How do I get rid of all this other in there that's going to distract and confuse, especially me? So, some of the things we can do is we could start with just a preliminary drawing. So, take my pastel pencils. I don't like the placement of all those roses, like the big one and the little bud next to it that's just opening up. They're right in the middle of the picture. That's a terrible placement of those, and they're right next to each other. So the little one right there, it's getting a lot of attention because it's so bright, and contrasting with those yellows and reds and oranges, the orangish reds that are in there. They're so brilliant and saturated and beautiful. And then the rose next to it, of course, is just huge, and it has a lot of really pretty colors in it as well. Plus those bright highlights along the tips of the rose petals. So much fun there, but they're competing with one another. So I need to subdue one and bring another one more prominently as the star of the picture. Well, how do I decide what to do? Should I just start painting it exactly the way everything's arranged and I see it? Then, so if I start getting confused and I'm not sure where to go with it, that's one thing that can throw me off and cause me to say, I have no idea what to do. I'm frozen. I just can't do it. So this is where, for the most part, I will just start covering my canvas with paint, and I'll show you that here in a moment. But some other things that we might do is just play around. So let's say like with these pastel pencils, we can just take and say, okay, so maybe we want one of the roses here, maybe another little one right here, not quite in the middle, so the middle's about right there. No, middle's maybe right in here. Where are we at? Yeah. So right about in here is the middle. So I'll ignore that and see with pastel, you can just rub it right out. So maybe I'll put the little one down here. I've got these others in the corner. I don't want them quite up in that upper corner because that becomes a place where, boom, right in these corners, that's where someone's gonna, if there's something prominent there, people are gonna look at those. I want them to come down here a little bit more. So maybe I'll keep some of that in here. I like it that it's going halfway out of the picture. So maybe I'll put it in here like this. Come in. So I can start drawing, and I don't have to do it with black and white. I could do it with my vine charcoal. Maybe down here. I could do it with vine charcoal. It's so easy. It comes in quick. I can work with it. Decide how to do my roses like that maybe. Come over, maybe do a rose over here. Kind of design it, and then I realize, no, those are right on level with each other, so maybe I'll come like that. Maybe take that one off a little bit. Something down in this way, down here, leaves maybe. I can play with it like that. And if I don't like it, then I can rub something off. Or I can come in and maybe work on my black and white, really getting the idea of my shadow and light pattern in here, and do it quickly. So I can squint at my image and decide, what do I have in here? And if I really squint down, this flower right here is bright. And for the most part, the flowers are fairly bright. The darkest darks are back here. There are these windows that are back in here. And then everything else is about the same except for maybe the trellis. And that's also very dark, like the windows in the background. And I have a few really dark spots down in here. But overall, it's all kind of the same gray, darker middle value in there. So I might just cover my whole image with that sort of thing. And then start to come in, once I've got it kind of a nice overall tone to it. And I can do this with paint also, and I prefer to do this with paint. But if you're afraid of the paint for the moment, you can try it with these charcoal pencils. And then we can come in, just grab a paper towel, and start wiping back some of this, and play with it. or a chamois or any other rag like that. Maybe get a leaf here and there, not too light, because we want to maintain our light and dark pattern in here. And maybe grab a little kneaded eraser. Sometimes you just need an eraser. And can really get in some of the drawing just like this. Well, anything that we do this way, we can paint over the top of that. And it might be good to spray a little bit of fixative on it, which is what I have right here. This artist workable fixative, but I prefer not to use this kind of stuff because the fumes from it are so toxic. If I'm outside, it might be all right. But overall, I'm just getting the basics down with this vine charcoal. It's very soft. It's not going to stay on there. So overall, with the charcoal, it's just for me to get something on there to get kind of an idea of my light and dark pattern and to not get too caught up with anything fully. I might do some small little boxes like this, maybe a little tiny box here and there. And I might even play with different formats, maybe a taller vertical format. And then I can play with just black and white where I really cover everything in like this, black and white. And then I arrange my flowers in certain spots. That sort of thing. That's really terrible, sorry. But that, just the idea of it. And this is where a lot of people like to do that in their sketchbook with a Sharpie, because Sharpies can be really handy. And this is great stuff for experimenting, for playing when we're trying to learn something. When we're just playing around like this and experimenting, it is great stuff because we can do almost anything with it. We can even leave it ungessoed if we want to, and it'll be just fine for a long time. Now, if we want to keep that for posterity, then we're probably going to want to put some acrylic gesso on it because the oil paint over time will rot the paper. But if we're just out playing, we don't have to worry about it. Just cut it up into pieces and take it out and use it as a sketch pad. With oil paints, with gouache, with watercolor, with whatever it is we want to use, we can paint anything on top of that. Acrylics, charcoals, markers, any of it. And it works great. And then we can go out on location with this little sheet of this watercolor paper and play and learn and experiment. So a lot of people like to use these Sharpies to do their dark and light patterns, especially since, and this isn't going to work out great on here because I do have that acrylic gesso on there, but let's say we're just experimenting with some of this stuff like this. And we decide we want to find out if we try different ways of placing these in there. So maybe we do the darker way up here at the top, something like a really dark landscape background back here. And I think my Sharpie is giving out. And then maybe as we come down, it gets lighter down in here for our background. And then we put our flowers in. Well, I've got all these different colors of Sharpies, so I can play with some of the leaf stuff. I think all of my markers are drying out on me. Haven't used these for a little while. Sorry about that. Aha! Found one that's working, but it's very blue. Ah, see this guy here. We can come in and get some of our flowers. A flower up here, and you can't see it anymore. Let's see down here. Nope, that guy's pretty well gone too. Okay, so if I started with these, and I did a red flower here, and then I tried one up here, a little pink flower, and I come down this way, maybe one down here, maybe some little buds somewhere in here. Green background. So we're just playing around, seeing what are the possibilities with all of this. So we might just have a little pad and we play like that. And we're looking at them and thinking, well, that is a possibility. Maybe I get some highlights in the, or darker areas in the flowers. That, maybe a touch here and there with a red. So that's great if you have just a sketch pad of watercolor paper. Terrible if you plan on oil painting over the top of that, because Sharpies will bleed right on up and out of it. They use chemicals and different inks that are not compatible with oil painting. The things that you want to use, if you actually want to use markers that are compatible with oil painting, where you could put it down first and then oil paint on top of it, are these right here. These Pitt Artist pens. They are fantastic because they're done with India or Indian ink. They're made, you'll see on the website it'll say India ink. On the pen right here it'll say Indian ink. So it's all the same thing. But these things are fantastic. Let's say, oops, oh, that one's that's not one of my brush pens. That was weird. There's a brush pen. So let's say we'll put in a little, and this set. So this set right here, this big set, I've had since I was doing my master's program. I think I bought those in 2003, and they're still going strong. These things are crazy good. Some of them have given up on me, but overall, they work out fantastic. This little set right here, I just bought about a month ago. So nice and bright, but India ink will not bleed up and through your paintings. So this stuff we can definitely use. So let's say, and these sets are great because we can build them up. So I've got all this set, this from black to grays in here. I've got all kinds of these browns in here. I've used up a lot of the colors that were in here over the years, but I replaced them with this, with a lot of the reds. So let me see, pull those out. So the other thing that will bleed through our paintings are graphite pencils. I've done it and had it bleed through. I put a grid on a big 30 by 40 painting when I was transferring my preliminary work to my big canvas, and as I put layer and layer on top of it, the graphite came right up through and bled through and kept showing up and showing up and showing up. I finally had to go in and do some crazy stuff to erase it out of there, all that pencil, and then start building on top of it again. All that preliminary work was just wasted, hours and hours of it. So, all right. So let's say we take and we do some little boxes. I'll do several little boxes like this. And we could even do this because we can paint right over the top of this. We could do it on our, let's say we go out on location, we have a 12 by 16. We could go over to the side of it like this and make some little boxes like this. And we could experiment with different ideas about what it is that we want to do. So let's say with this image of roses, I want to decide whether I want to keep these windows in here or not. So I might come in and put some windows back in here. And then do I keep all the intricacy in this guy right here, or do I just keep the roses in there? That trellis will probably get pretty distractive. And then I can come over the top of those, make them darker. Do I want to keep the flowers over in this area? Pull one down here maybe. A couple of them up over this way. Some little tiny ones. Or would it be better if I take the big rose, put it up in this area like this, maybe a little one, maybe a little bit coming off the edge over here, something down over this way? Would I enjoy that more? Or if I just decide to reduce this big one here down a bit, and this one a little bit smaller, some up over this way, maybe some of those roses come this way, over here, coming down a bit, down this way. So this is kind of how I can go through and figure out what I want to keep and what I don't. I can try out different compositional things with just these little markers, and I don't have to worry about them because I can paint right over the top of them. So I can keep maybe those windows in, put some greenery around this. But see, I think, to me, just looking at that, the windows are going to really distract from everything. This could be fun because I could get a lot of those flowers that are around it and pull them in and kind of create lines going in here, the implied lines with some of those flowers. But I think I do like this big flower. I just have to see how to minimize this one a bit, but I kind of pull it over towards the center. I think that got a little too close, but I have it, if I get my line right, like this. See, if I have it a little bit farther down, the center is going to be about right there, so I have a little bit under center and over. This one will throw that off a bit so that it doesn't feel like it's totally in the center of the painting, I think. And that might work. This one I've entirely avoided the bullseye, getting it in the center. So those are some ideas there of experimenting. Okay, so the other thing we talked about was we could take some of our pastel pencils and play with them like this, build them up slow. Here's some of these little red flowers back in here. And they could just be accents that we put in after a little while. Let's see, we've got this guy over here, like that. And I make sure that I keep it so it's not on line with this one. It is kind of with that, but not with this right here. So it's kind of a triad there of those three. I think this one right down here I don't like because it's right in the same kind of trajectory as this, but maybe if I move it over a little bit and have just a little bit down there, might bring some color into it. These little reddish crimson flowers over here might be good as long as I have them behind the plant, like a stalk or something, so that I really push them back. Maybe some of these little accents of other flowers back in the distance would be good. All right, so we've covered some of the things like this. For the most part, if you're going to do something like this underneath when you want to get started, just because it helps you to break up the white and get started with something. A lot of artists like to outline, or they like to draw in what they're going to have with an outline. So maybe coming in and determining the overall bush shapes. This is an olive green pencil. Something like that might be helpful to figure out where our major shapes are going to be. Like these are both green bushes of leaves, or of rose leaves. And then we have our overall bush right here of rose leaves. That sort of thing can be helpful for some people. Even coming in with some charcoal with that and blocking it in quick. Okay, so that is not my charcoal. That is one of the crayons I used in my printmaking. This process is way too slow for me. So some of you might like process. You might like the sitting down and being careful and working through it. And so this might work out really well for you. You could come in and create these windows back in here if you want to put windows in there. Let's see, oh, you know what, I'm not even looking at the image. So they are kind of wider, aren't they? And then they just have those, if I'd really been watching, I would have left a little spaces in here. Oops. Like this. Maybe this sort of thing here. Uh-oh, and I covered it over anyway. Whoa, that really came out brighter than I expected. Let's see if the phthalo blue will cover that over. I was trying to use the 2 to make it darker. There we go. A little bit darker. That's probably a better color right there. And these are reacting differently than they would on paper because I have that acrylic gesso down on there. So some of you might want the experience of just going and doing that sort of thing. I'm not one of them. Sorry, I just, that sort of thing just kind of starts to drive me. You know what? I can't say that. I really do love to draw. This can be so much fun to just draw these out. But when I have oil paints at my disposal and I know I'm doing an oil painting, the other things that I can do with oil paints are so much more fast and expeditious that doing it this way just seems unnecessary and time consuming. But there are some people who just love this kind of process. So for them, this might be just so much fun that they can't help themselves. They have to do it like this. And it might just be a way to not get intimidated by that canvas. And then once you have all this down, then you might feel more inclined to grab your oil paints and start painting on top. Now, one of the things that I would really watch for with that idea in mind is that once we start getting a lot down on here that is definite, like lines, lines tend to be a little bit definite, we'll also start to think that, like a coloring book, I need to stay within those lines that I've created. And that can become a roadblock to creativity and change and imagination and really using our brains instead of thinking that we're locked into a particular pattern or idea that's on here. So watch that. Don't get caught up in the idea that I have to do it like this. I don't know. That got thrown in there. I'm not even sure where that came from. It's a fine pointed brush. Pen. I didn't even know I had any like that. So at the moment, I don't have any nice bright crimson pens. I have more just the alizarin crimson. And I don't have the cad red kind of colors in here. More just the alizarin crimson kind of colors. Or quinacridone red kind of colors in there. Wow, that's getting really busy. I need some greenery in here now. And I'm going to speed all of this up. And then maybe we can figure out this with something like this, how we want the stems to go. Maybe I want it to curve a little bit more than that. And maybe some of these back here. So see, I can start to get an idea with these pens, if I'm afraid with the oil paints of getting too much too soon and getting overwhelmed by the oil paints. I could play with these and see if they might work better for me to get my composition worked out. And maybe even a little bud. So, we could have fun with that. And of course, This then looks awful, so I would take that out. All right, so now that we've kind of demonstrated a little bit some awkward ways of going about starting a painting, at least getting something on the canvas, let's get to what I actually like to do on a regular basis. Okay, so this went on a lot longer than it was supposed to. These beginner videos are supposed to be short. That's what we want, at least. Short and concise and to the point, just showing a technique or an idea or some way that I do something with painting. And this one was all about how to just get started when that white canvas is staring back at us and we're thinking, I just don't know where to start. I don't know what to do. I'm intimidated. Well, this is to get over that intimidation. Just some ideas for that. So this is the first half. Second half will show how I normally get started, how I just jump in and start painting, and a couple of ways that I do that. Really, it's just to get something on the canvas, just to get it covered. And if that takes drawing with markers or charcoal or whatever it might be, then do that. Just have fun with it. Remember, all of this is entirely forgiving. We can cover it over again. And when we're using those India ink markers or charcoal, especially the vine charcoal, we can paint over the top of that. So just do whatever it takes. Take a piece of paper, whether it's watercolor paper or whatever, and cut it up into pieces. Go out on location or here in the studio, set up a little still life, and just start doing something. Just start drawing or painting and play with it. Because that's really what it is. The beginning part of this, we can just play and have fun. So, whatever you do, whether it's with the markers, with oil paint, however you want to get started, just don't worry about the beginning of it. Get in there, get messy, play with it. Don't worry about it being perfect, and cover up something. Just cover it, because once we start to put something on the canvas, then our minds will start to ruminate and generate ideas, and we'll get pulled in to the momentum of it all, and then we'll move forward. But it's just staring at that white sometimes that can stop us. So don't worry about the white. Just take anything, whatever it is that you have around you that'll work on with oil painting. Just start marking on that whiteness, and pretty soon you'll just start getting into the groove of it and having fun with it. So that's what it's all about. And the second half, I'll show you how I normally get started, just jumping in there with my oil paints. But hopefully this will give you some ideas. Have fun with it, and happy painting. Bye.